Shalom Uvracha, Yerushalayim, Ir HaKodesh. We have the privilege this evening of studying together the Haftarah of Parshiyot, Tazria-Metzora. This coming Shabbat, Be'ezrat Hashem, we read two sections of the Torah, Tazria and Metzora combined, and the Haftarah that we're studying now is the Haftarah that's read of these two sections. I'd just like to make a little note for those people viewing this video. If you're seeing it during this year, in 5772, in year 2012, this particular year, this particular Shabbat, we do not read the Haftarah of Tazria-Metzora, since this Shabbat is the day before Rosh Chodesh. We have a special Haftarah of Erev Rosh Chodesh. The reason why I chose to study this evening is because we already have a video on Shabbat Erev Rosh Chodesh, on that Haftarah from chapter 20 of Vayomer Lo Yom Natan Machar Chodesh. If anyone is interested, they should view the other video as well. I saw an interesting note in this book here. There's a wonderful luach called Davar Bi'ito. He points out that the next time this Haftarah will be read, Vayomer Lo Yehonatan Machar Chodesh, Erev Rosh Chodesh Haftarah, he says the next time will be in 19 months from now. It's a very, very long gap. In other words, nothing throughout the entire next year, but only in Erev Rosh Chodesh Kislev of Tafshin Ayin Daled will that be the next time that this Haftarah is read. In any case, we would like to study together the Haftarah of Tazria-Metzora, and the reading, the prophetic reading is taken from the second book of Kings, chapter 7, verses 3 through 20. I would like to focus at the beginning of our study on the first sentence, because one of the challenges that's incumbent upon students of Haftarah is to try to seek to find connections between the parasha and the Haftarah. In the case of the Haftarah of Tazria and Metzora, it's relatively easy, since the theme of the parasha, both in Parshat Tazria and in Parshat Metzora, there are lengthy discussions about lepers, about the laws of Mitzoraim. It seems quite fitting that the rabbis would choose a section from the prophetic books, from the book of Melachim, that deal with Mitzoraim. That's the opening section. I'm reading sentence 3 of chapter 7. Va'arba'a anashim hayu Mitzoraim petach hashar. There were 4 men who were lepers right outside the city gate. So that's the theme of the parasha. In fact, this idea of keeping the lepers, of keeping the Mitzoraim outside of the camp, is a law in the Torah, in our Torah reading of this week, in Parshat Tazria, in chapter 13, we read that one of the instructions is that every leper has to be outside of the camp. Badad Yeshev, he shall be alone in his dwelling. Michutz lamachaneh moshavo, outside of the camp shall be his dwelling place. He can't be within the regular city. And Rashi, quoting the teachings of the rabbis of the Gemara, Rashi in our Parsha quotes the teaching. Why was there a designation to keep the lepers outside of the community? And you could say it has to do with certain kinds of levels of sensitivity to contagious degrees of God forbid, causing other people to be damaged or to be negatively affected by leprosy. Although if you understand this leprosy to be a different kind of leprosy, a spiritual form of punishment, then I don't know if that's necessarily the consideration. But there is this notion in rabbinic literature that very often the sin causing leprosy, may all the lepers be healed, and may there never be any further need to deal with leprosy, not on a physical or a spiritual level. The rabbis teach that in the biblical times, surely, leprosy was often a result of negative speech, of lashon hara, mitzorah, motzi ra. The person was always seeking to bring out the bad, to speak evil, speak slanderous words about others. So Rashi, quoting the teaching from Masechet Arachin says, I'm reading Rashi on Perek Yud Gimel, Pasuk Mevav. Ma nishtana misha'ar t'meim le'shev badad. Why is it that the Torah designates the leper to be alone outside? Ho'il v'hu hivdil b'lashon hara bein ish le'ishto uvein ish l're'ehu afu yibadel. As a result of the speech of a slanderer, God forbid, many relationships were broken. Many people were so close to each other, even husbands and wives. Sometimes someone goes and says something to the husband about the wife, or something to the wife about the husband. That's the end of the relationship. They separate people. Sometimes people are very close. Some people have a close association. They're very friendly with each other. And one person hears words of a negative nature, and that's it. They end their friendship. They end their association. So many businesses were broken up that way. So many partnerships were broken up that way. So many friendships were broken up that way. So since the Metzorah, according to this interpretation, if we're talking about the kind of Metzorah, who was as a result of the sin of Lashon Hara, since this person caused others to be separated, so midah keneged midah, measure for measure, so too this person becomes isolated also. They're isolating people. They're separating people from other people, and they too are separated. The Midrash is a very interesting reading, because you see, our Haftarah seems to be a living testimony to the fact that these laws were fulfilled. In other words, we read in the Torah about all kinds of laws of what you're supposed to do with lepers. But if you read the Book of Kings, you see that it wasn't a theoretical teaching only, it wasn't academic only. They actually did this. They carried it out. V'arba'a anashim hayu mitzoraim betach hashar. And in the fascinating passage, in Midrash HaGadol points out, I believe Midrash HaGadol is a series of Midrashim from Yemenite authorship, putting together various classical Midrashic sources. In Midrash HaGadol, if you're interested, it's the Midrash HaGadol on Parshat Tzav, in Parshat Vav. The Midrash points out the outstanding nature of the fact that our Haftarah is telling us that they did exactly what it says in the Torah. The Torah says, Badad Yeshev Michutz LaMachaneh, and they fulfilled it. They kept that. They kept the lepers outside of the camp. But what's striking to the rabbis of the Midrash is that we're talking about a depraved generation. We're talking about the king at this time seemingly is a person who's very, very distant from the observances of Torah. Yehoram ben Achav. We wouldn't think that Yehoram ben Achav carries out the words of God. And even Yehoram ben Achav, I'll read you the Midrash. Ein l'chador yarud midoro shel Yehoram ben Achav. There is no generation more depraved than the generation that we're speaking of in the story, the generation of Yehoram ben Achav. Af al pikein. Look what it says about him, V'arba'a anashim, ma katuv bo? V'arba'a anashim hayu mitzoraim betach hashar. They fulfill the word of the Torah. Af al pi she'ein shruyim b'matzor. Even though the city was besieged by the people of Aram, and even though there was a famine in the land, bara'av u'b'tzama u'v'choser kol, hayu mishalachim mitzoraim min ha'ayarod. Nevertheless, they saw to it to follow the teaching of God. So on one level, we could read the Haftarah as a fulfillment of the teachings of the Parsha, with special emphasis on the fact that even those who seemingly were so distant from the fulfillment of Torah, they too kept it. But I would like to share an article that I read many years ago, and an article in a book called Logic of the Heart, Logic of the Mind, by Rabbi Aharon Soloveitchik. I don't know if you can get the article. You can't get it. Logic of the Heart, Logic of the Mind. This is I Xeroxed the article. Rabbi Soloveitchik, Rabbi Aharon Soloveitchik, wrote a brilliant article on Israel's Day of Independence, Reflections in Halacha and Hashkafa. That's the name of the article. If you're interested in this book, Logic of the Heart, Logic of the Mind. And in in a fascinating teaching, he says that our Haftarah, which, by the way, the Haftarah of Tazria and Metzora, in most years, is read the week of Yom Ha'atzmaut, right? It's most years. It's around the time of Yom Ha'atzmaut. Says Rabbi Soloveitchik, there's a message in this Haftarah for a certain world view of Israel Independence Day from a religious perspective. It's many pages, the article. I'm not going to go into all of his details, but I'd like to focus on one thing he says. He says, chapter 7 of Kings 2 has bearing on the arguments of our attitudes towards Yom Ha'atzmaut. What's the connection? So he said, you know why so many religious people, don't want to recognize the importance of the establishment of Medinat Yisrael? You know why so many people feel that the state of Israel, this can't really be part of this great plan of God of redemption? You know why? Who are the founding members of the state of Israel? And I deeply love and respect each of them. I think that we're sitting here in Yerushalayim thanks to them. And may God bless their souls. Those that are no longer living in this world, those that are in this world, they should be blessed. I mean, God forbid, we don't want to be mezalzel in their kavod. But many of these people openly said that they were not connected to religious practices. Maybe they were all hidden tzaddikim. Maybe they didn't want anyone to know about their connection. But at least on a level that could be observed by others, many of these people were irreligious. Maybe there were even some, I don't know if this is true, maybe there were even some who were anti-religious. So Rabbi Soloveitchik says, some religious people feel that since non-observant Jews primarily led the movements which culminated in the establishment of the state of Israel, so this is not really the way God works. If God wanted to create a state of Israel which would be connected to a divine plan of redemption, surely the state would have been created through, very highly motivated, religiously Torah observant people. And he wants to refute this argument. I think it's brilliant. He wants to refute this argument based on our Haftarah. He says, who brought about the salvation in the story of our Haftarah? Before Metzorah. For Metzorah. The story is fascinating. We're reading a story, and that's the message of the Haftarah. Samaria, the capital of the northern kingdom of Israel, was besieged by the armies of Syria, and they were suffering throes of famine. They couldn't have food. There was no food. Articles of food would have been considered repulsive, were obtainable only at an outrageous price. There was nothing to eat. Samaria, what?
And these four.
Yes. You remember the story?
Yeah.
Samaria seemed doomed. And desperate at the situation of the inhabitants of Samaria was the condition of the four outcasts was infinitely worse, because these four outcasts in the pasuk, there's no identity, there's no name for these people. The rabbis teach that these people were Gehazi and his three sons.
Wow.
Gehazi and his three sons, and according to one reading, they were being punished for spiritual heresy. And the Rambam, this is Rabbi Soloveitchik, the Rambam in his commentary on the Mishnah describes them as cynics and scoffers. Mm-hmm. So they were ostracized because of their leprosy. They faced death by starvation. They decided to surrender to the Assyrians. That's what it says in the Haftarah. Just read it. It's very fascinating. So read chapter 7. At worst, they thought they'll be put to death, immediately, which would be better than starving. And at best, maybe their lives would be spared. They had nothing to lose and everything to gain. And as they approach, remember? As they approach the camp, they approach the camp of Syria, and they see a miraculous spectacle. The camp was empty, and on every side there were signs of people that ran away in panic. And in their haste, the Syrian soldiers abandoned everything. They left tents, horses, an abundance of food, weapons, precious stones, metals. And the people, the four lepers, went from tent to tent, taking these precious objects and hiding them. And soon they realized we are not deporting ourselves properly. This is a day of good tidings. We are not allowed to be passive. If we tarry till the next morning, we will be guilty. We will be guilty of an unforgivable sin. And they go and they inform the people of Israel of what's going on. They entered the city of Samaria and conveyed the good tidings to the inhabitants. Who were the messengers to bring about the salvation of the Jewish people at this time? They were the Metzorahim. We thus see, says Rabbi Salvation, that the miracle of the deliverance of all the inhabitants of Samaria was carried out through the medium of 4 lepers. Physical lepers, yes, but above all, spiritual lepers. So all those people who think, I can't be, this can't be part of a God plan. Well, maybe study the Haftarah a little bit, maybe to you, someone who's classified as an epikoros, someone who's classified as a non-believer, they can't be part of a divine plan. They can't be the ones to bring relief to the. Oh yes, they can. Read Perek Zayin of Melachim Bet. This episode shows that no Jew can be excluded from the grace of God. That Yisrael afal pisha chata Yisrael. A Jew, even though his sin remains a Jew, and that there's an innate tendency towards altruism, even in the heart of spiritual lepers. It also shows that God does not exclude any Jew from salvation. And God may therefore designate even spiritual outcasts. I'm not saying, God forbid, that all the founders of the state are spiritual outcasts. If anyone is accusing me of that, it's not true. I didn't say that. But even if you want to take the position that these can't be the messages, they definitely can be the messengers. They definitely can be the messengers of God. And when I read this teaching, I heard it many years ago, and I think it's such an eye opener of how to, especially the association with the time, right? The Tazria-Metzora, right near the celebration of the foundation of the state of Israel. Maybe it means that God doesn't necessarily follow the plan that you would follow. Isaiah says, "Ki lo machshavotai, machshavotechem." Well, you have your ways of doing things. You have your ways, I have my ways. You have your thoughts, I have my thoughts. And I'll read you one sentence in Rabbi Soloveitchik's writings, which is a little painful to read, but I'll read it anyway. He says, perhaps the fact that non-observant Jews are in the forefront is a penalty for Orthodox Jewry's failure to play the most important part in the formation of the state. So I don't know. I have my own ideas. I mean, this Rabbi Salvation is a very, very beautiful article, and directly connects to our Haftarah. I think that maybe God, and of course I'm guessing here, I'm speculating, but maybe if this movement would have only been a movement of Torah observant scholars, or rabbinical figures, maybe it would have been very exclusive. And maybe since not all the Jewish people, not yet, maybe tonight it'll change, but as of this afternoon, not all the Torah, not all the Jewish people all over the world were yet connected to Torah openly. So maybe they wouldn't feel a connection to the state they would feel a connection to Israel. Maybe this is part of a secret plan of God, that you bring about the foundation through people who are not spiritually threatening to you. They speak in nationalism, they speak in political terms, they speak in different, and all kinds of people feel connected. But whatever that may be, the foundation and the establishment of the state can be brought about even through all kinds of messages of God. Our Beis Shluchim Lamakom. And one of the messages of our Haftarah is that the 4 Metzorahim, who are the rejects of the society, perhaps, on levels, not even within the camp of Israel, they are the ones. They are the ones that God employs to bring about the salvation to the Jewish people. You'll never know. You never know who exactly will be designated to be that messenger, to bring the bracha and the blessing to all Am Yisrael. That may be the secret message of the Haftarah of Tazria-Metzora. Thank you so much for listening.